Please like, subscribe, and be sure to click that bell button for regular and exciting indie film content and your chance to be the first to engage with the Lift-Off Global Network of Film Festivals as we embark on launching the careers of the filmmakers of tomorrow.
Hello everyone and welcome to today's stream. Today we are chatting to three filmmakers who picked up the Audience Choice Award from the Lift-Off Showcase Extravaganza 2022. It feels weird saying that because we're halfway through the year and I still haven't got my mouth around that we're in 2022, not 2021 anymore. So fantastic that you guys have managed to join us on today's stream. We are joined by Joshua, David, and Michael, who are the three filmmakers who picked up the Audience Choice. Let's find out a little bit more from our filmmakers. Let's start with you, Joshua. Do you want to tell us a little bit more about who you are and your project?
I'm Josh. I directed Exiled, a Star Wars fan film. It kind of all came from me and a couple of my friends who all also work in the film industry. We were at a job where we just kind of weren't creatively fulfilled at all, and we were like, okay, so we need to do something to just like get this creative energy out. It had been building up forever, and we were just like, okay, we need to make something. So my friend Ryan came up with the idea to do something for May the 4th, but brought it up about a week before May the 4th. So actually on April 27th, which I think is almost exactly a week before, we started kind of planning things out. We ran to the store, just kind of walked through the store looking at like different weird objects, trying to get ideas for props and kind of hoping those ideas would kind of branch off into story beats. And we were trying to build the story kind of as we went. And then we quickly moved into costumes, getting that all done, which Ryan Denny, who did all the costumes for the film, he's fantastic with costumes and props, and everything ended up looking fantastic.
I can't wait to find out more about that when we have this, the film playing as well, because then the audience will be able to see exactly what you're talking about.
Oh yeah, for sure.
Right now. But your film is playing first, so we'll come to that in a moment. But let's find out who else is on the call before we get there. So David, do you want to introduce yourself and your project?
Of course. I'm Dave Filmore. My film is called Pancake Panic, and it's an animation. The way this came about was originally my career was in live action and documentary, but I became a little kind of disillusioned with that because I don't like going outside the house. I'm very much a house cat, so I was thinking I kind of prefer animation. I don't need to leave my bedroom. I can just do this whole thing here. So this is my second animation that I made, and yeah, it represents all of my laziness, my dedication to laziness.
I was going to say, I don't think creating an animation is laziness at all, especially when you've got, five different stories within the animation itself, which we can find out a little bit more later on. And then finally, we have Michael. Hi, Michael. Thanks for joining. Tell us a little bit more about who you are and your project.
Sure. So my name is Michael Hayden. Last year, I started a kind of horror, interactive horror platform called Nightmare Network. And our kind of whole idea was that we would have podcasts based on like movies that scared us as we were little, revisiting them as adults and seeing what kind of effect that they had on us. So we started this podcast series last year, which you can find on Spotify or Apple Podcasts, wherever you get your podcasts.
You've said that before. You have said that one before.
Shameless plugs.
Yeah.
So, but as we wanted to do, what we really wanted to do was make short films, and our idea was that we would take our followers and subscribers like real nightmares and turn them into short films. And really kind of what we found out was that when we started getting submissions from like friends and families, because this was one of the first ones we made, Digging, my short film that we'll be talking about today, was that people had very different definitions of nightmares. Because I was thinking people would be like, last night I had a dream that this happened, and we would be turning that into a short. But for this specific one, somebody messaged me and said, marriage is my nightmare. And so I was like, okay. People have very different definitions of nightmare. And so I came up with the story about kind of a dysfunctional marriage that ends with the wife killing the husband and trying to bury them in the backyard, and him coming back from the grave and kind of nagging her one more time before
before he gets buried. So
that's where that came from.
Amazing. Well, we've got all three films programmed and ready to go. So we're going to start with Josh's film first, Exiled, A Star Wars fan film. But before we do that, I would just like to say, if anyone is watching and has any questions for our filmmakers throughout the stream today, I will pass them on and we'll get them to answer any questions that you may have. As I get the film programmed, Josh, why don't you delve in a little bit deeper and talk about, I think I cut you off at the costume part where you were delving a lot in. So if you want to pick up from where we were, that would be great.
Absolutely. Ryan Denny was our costume designer. He did a lot of the prop work as well. He's absolutely fantastic with all the costumes, and they all turned out amazing. In a second, you'll be able to see, especially the Mandalorian costume that we ended up having was very well detailed.
It was insane.
I was kind of awestruck by how fast he was able to get the entire thing done. I think it took him 3 days to do all the costumes, which was just absolutely insane to me. And even the backpack that Ryan is actually the smuggler in the film, and the backpack he wears was all handmade the night before the shoot. It was just kind of something he threw together really, really fast, so we had something. And that all happened because the night before the shoot was when I was doing a lot of the previs stuff, and I had been doing a shot list and kind of getting that all prepared. And I realized I wanted the opening shot to have some exposition. So I was like, hey, do you think you could make a bag or something that we can kind of focus on for the first shot? Because I thought it would just be nice to show this is a scrap that he's obviously stolen from someone. It's something that he couldn't have just owned. It's something that's dusty and dirty, and you can tell it's been through a lot of travel. So thankfully he was able to make that happen very last minute. And the night before, we actually were just in our living room because Zach and Ryan, who I worked on the film with, are also my roommates.
Perfect.
So we got together in the living room and spent probably 4 hours just shooting different angles, trying to get ideas of what we wanted. And I just shot everything on my phone, and I did a quick previs using the footage that we shot in our living room. So there is a version of the short film that is just us in socks and pajamas, basically
amazing.
doing the whole film. And
so by doing that, then when you actually got onto location and you were ready to shoot, everyone who was involved knew exactly what was going on. And how long did the shoot then take? Did you use the full day, or did you use a half day, or what was your shoot time?
We had to take a full day because we started shooting in Sandy, Utah, which there's a canyon called Little Cottonwood Canyon, and it has a lot of nice hiking trails. So we actually, for the waterfall and all those trails and stuff, we actually went up in there because we wanted to find somewhere that didn't just have normal looking foresty trees, because that's always been my complaint in Star Wars short films, is that you can tell someone just walked into the woods. So I wanted to go up into the mountains and try to go as high as we could in the mountains, so that it was all a little bit of a different kind of environment than you could usually get. So we went pretty high up in the mountain, found a nice waterfall, shot everything there. And I think we shot there for about 2 hours. And then we had to get in the car and drive straight to the Bonneville Salt Flats, which were about an hour and a half away. I think we ended up getting there probably around noon.
Okay.
And we shot there until about 9:30 at night.
Yeah. Okay.
So, yeah.
No, the location move. I mean, on a short scale, on a short film scale or a large film scale, the location move always takes so much more time than anticipated. Even if when you write it down on a schedule, it'll take an hour, 2 hours max, and then you get there and it's just no.
Yeah, well, and the thing is, a lot of the salt flats are known for flooding, especially in April and May, which you'll see a lot of music videos are shot during that time because it has a really nice mirror effect where the entire ground just looks like a mirror. But it was starting to dry up, but then there were just areas where there were just massive floods, and you kind of had to avoid those while shooting.
Yeah.
I actually almost got my car stuck trying to drive around all of it. But yeah, shooting there was probably the most interesting shooting experience I've had, because unexpectedly the winds were like 40 miles an hour. It was just crazy windy, and then suddenly there was a fire that started on the other side of the mountain, and so we had like at the end where it looks really hazy, that's just smoke. That was from a forest fire happening on the other side of the mountain. It was just
One of my notes that I've got is about the camera and the cinematography and the lighting, because I feel like now I've had the story of you moving around different locations, I think it works so well with the light that you have across the film. Was this a happy accident, or was this all planned in with when you did the kind of pre-shoot for it and discussing the lighting?
it was kind of a mix, because a lot of it was planned. The night before, when I was scheduling things out, I was like, okay, well, the sun's going to definitely be setting by the time we get to this scene.
Yeah.
How can we incorporate that? So we wanted to make it, as the tension built, the sun would be setting throughout that. So we pushed that stuff a little bit later in the day so we could just spend more time focusing on the other shots and making sure the cinematography was what we wanted.
Yeah.
Because our main focus in this was to see how much production value we could put into something in a short period of time. Which I feel like we did okay with.
Yes,
So,
I think
thank
you
you.
did too. Yeah, and then the final question I have is about the VFX. Really, like, are you a VFX artist, or did you get someone else on the project to help with that?
Yeah, I actually, my main job right now is editing and visual effects for film. So that was just something, the visual effects I think took me like 2 hours for
Oh,
the whole
really?
short.
Yeah, that was quick. Damn.
Yeah, I'm kind of known in Utah for just being very fast with my work. Especially since I work with a lot of YouTube channels right now.
Yeah.
So which back there's actually like a play button thing there.
Oh, well done. Well done.
um but yeah, so I kind of went in and was like, okay, I know the effects I want, I know I can't spend a lot of time on this, so I kind of like went through and kind of picked what I thought was the most necessary, and then focused the most time on those shots, and then then we ended up scrapping some stuff, but just doing everything we could to make it look as nice as possible.
So, considering this was a fan film that was due to be released on the 4th of May, you started shooting it a week before, which is insane. How has the response been to the film? Was it what you were hoping for, or apart from just making a film for the 4th of May, what was the purpose behind this project? Was it to do more, or to get it into festivals?
It was initially to just kind of get that energy brewing, but then we started planning. It started inspiring us to start working on other projects. So we do have a rough script for another Star Wars project that I don't know if and when that's going to be made. But outside of that, I'm also working on some horror scripts and stuff like that, because really the genre I fell in love with growing up was horror.
Yeah.
So that's kind of my focus on things. Sorry, I kind of went on a tangent and lost track.
All I was going to say about was like Michael's ears are pricked when you're talking about the horror films. But yeah, cool. And so, has it done well on the festival circuit at all, or what's the response been?
It's gotten a few awards. Yeah, I've been surprised by the reception. Initially, when we released it, it was intended to just be a kind of like on YouTube sort of thing. We weren't really thinking about releasing it to festivals until we saw the reception on YouTube, and it got like 11,000 views really quickly.
Amazing.
And we started getting a lot of feedback in the comments, and a lot of it was stuff that we just hadn't thought about while shooting. So in March of this year, I actually went back in, or was it? Yeah, March 24th of this year, I went back in and kind of made some small tweaks based on some of the audience reception, kind of using that as a screen test to kind of just smooth out the rough edges. There were a few areas where afterwards I was like, yeah, we could have probably done that a little better, done this a little better. The pacing could be better if we had this shot. And so I went in and did all of that, and kind of without telling the people I worked on, I was like, I'm just gonna enter in a few festivals and see what happens. And then when I told them, like, yeah, we just got nominated for a bunch of awards, they were like, oh, okay, cool. And it's just been exciting kind of seeing where it goes from there.
Amazing. And I guess my next question is, what inspired you to get into the film industry in the first place? Was there a particular film or moment, or was it the fact that you were so drawn by horror films that you wanted to try making your own? Or yeah, why the film industry?
It's kind of an interesting mix of things, because when I was 7, I remember being obsessed with action movies and wanting to make action movies. So I begged my mom to buy me a camera, and eventually she bought me this little camcorder that came with editing software, and it had, like, funny enough, visual effects stuff in it that I could play around with. And so at 7, I just started making these little films with this really crappy camera and running around and just shooting stuff. And I think that's where the spark started. Excuse me. And I think what really hooked me and kind of showed me, no, this is the path I need to go, is in, I think it was 2010 or 2011, Scream 4 was actually filming in my hometown, because I used to live in Michigan, which is where they filmed Scream 4. And I got to go on set and just watch them film for a few hours. And, like, they bought me a smoothie while I was there. It was all very weird. But it was just, I don't know, kind of seeing the process and then seeing the end product and kind of seeing how it worked on an actual film set. And then I think right after that, I was actually cast in a movie that my part got cut out of.
Oh, no, I was gonna say very cool, but then okay, fine.
I mean, I'm still in it. It's just there's a lot of close-ups on me, but I never talk anymore. So, but
yeah, that's
but
an amazing journey into this industry.
Yeah, it was really just kind of getting to see Wes Craven and that whole team shoot and stuff was an insane inspiration for me, which is why I have a ton of Scream memorabilia over here, because it's just kind of my biggest inspiration, I think.
Fantastic. David, Michael, do you have any questions for Joshua that you would like to ask once we have the opportunity to?
I'm fascinated about how you learned VFX, because it's always different for people. Some people study it, they go to school, they get a degree, and others, like me, just learned everything from YouTube.
Mm-hmm.
So how did you learn everything you learned? And how come you're so quick at it?
I learned very fast, which has always been kind of a very nice perk. I'm actually a little bit on the autistic spectrum, so from what my therapist has said, like, they think that kind of makes it so when I'm interested in something, I'm very intent on learning everything about that, so I kind of dive in really heavily. And I think when I was around 12 or 13 is when I really got into wanting to learn visual effects, because Film Riot started to blow up around that time, Indie Mogul, a bunch of these great YouTube channels. And so I would watch them, and then I begged my mom to buy me editing software, and I just started doing stuff and learning. And then I kind of put it off for a while, because I started doing a lot of work in theater, and did some touring shows in the US, up and down the East Coast. Excuse me. And right at the beginning of 2020, I was offered a editing job, which was going to be kind of a 6-month summer job before my next season of shows I had scheduled. And then obviously the whole pandemic happened, so those future jobs ended up getting canceled. And so I stuck with editing, and I was working with a YouTube channel called Ninja Kids TV, who they have, like, they're mainly children's content, but they have a lot of great they do a lot of great high production, like, shorts for kids based on movies. So I did some Ghostbusters stuff, I did some Star Wars stuff, which was cool because we got to work with Disney for those. And so I was working with them, and they kept coming to me and being like, hey, you can do visual effects, right? And I was like, yeah, like just ask me to do something. And eventually we finally started putting more visual effects into the projects, and then they were like, hey, can we do it at this level? And so I would have to kind of up my game. And usually our turnarounds were a week for a video, so I would get the footage and then have to do all the visual effects for like a 15-minute short film basically in a week.
Wow.
So because I was on such a time constraint, in order to not end up working like 18-hour days, I just forced myself to learn every shortcut I could, so I became really, really fast at it. Which,
Damn.
yeah.
Yeah. Wow.
I'm so jealous.
Yeah. Me too. I open Photoshop and I'm like, oh, no. But
Like, this
YouTube
button
is a
turns
great
it
tool.
pink. So I have 2 questions from a fellow horror nerd. Number 1, if you had to rank your screams, what would they be? And number 2, what you said you're working on some horror scripts coming up. Anything you want to share? Any cool ideas that you're willing to discuss?
Yeah, for sure. Well, for Scream, I think my current ranking would be the original 1. I think 5 might be my second favorite.
Really? I was gonna say how you felt about the new one.
I really enjoyed the new one. That 5 and 2 are kind of tied for me.
Okay, cool.
I have a hard time picking between the two because every time I watch 5, I'm like, oh no, this is my second favorite for sure. And then I watch 2 and I'm like, but this one's really good too.
I haven't seen the final one or the 5th one yet. But
oh, really?
For me, the first one, that was it. Like, that was the best one.
Oh, yeah. The first one's definitely the best. And then after 5 and 2, I would say 4 and 3.
Yeah.
Okay.
And then, yeah, my new script I'm working on right now, it's called 1954. And it's going to be kind of playing off of like the 50s B-movie kind of horror, but then trying to kind of mix that vibe with a more modern tone as well. And it's going to be focusing on sci-fi, so there's going to be an area where it shifts from that B-movie feeling to a more modern horror take, and then kind of shifts back.
Amazing.
But yeah, so I'm excited to continue working on that. I have a rough script right now, but I just read it and I'm going to rewrite the entire thing.
That happens a lot.
Yeah.
Fantastic. Well, thank you, Josh, for sharing that amazing insight into your career and also sharing the film. We're going to move on now to Michael's film with Digging. So I think it's appropriate that you ended that final question about the horror scripts that you're working on. Let's hear a little bit more about you, and just tell us again a little bit more about the concept that you created in order to get your production company off the ground.
Yeah, sure. So, like I said, we started this last year. It's called Nightmare Network, and we really just wanted to make kind of an interactive place where horror nerds could share their ideas and, maybe see their kind of nightmares come to life on a screen that we could be able to share out on YouTube.
Such an amazing concept.
Yeah.
So cool.
Much.
So many people sit there and be like, I don't know what to write. I want to write something, but I don't know what. And then all of a sudden you have these extreme ideas being thrown your way, and probably loads at the same time. So...
Yep, kind of exploiting my own audience, but we're just gonna ignore that part about it. But yeah. So we had this idea, and like I said, I thought it was a great idea. So we kind of made this first batch of movies, and Digging was one of them. We have another one called Bleeding Hearts that is actually about dating. So we figured out kind of quickly that relationships were causing people a lot of nightmares, especially in COVID times. But we had a few other submissions too. So we made around a batch of 4 that we're planning on distributing later in the summer, and it's going to be a cool thing where we tag the person who submitted them so that they can see that their nightmare has come to life, and we have a hashtag called Share Your Scares. Cool. So yeah, if anybody out there wants to submit something to us, you can do it on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, anything. Just use the hashtag Share Your Scares. We see it and we try to make it into a nightmare that we can put out for everyone to see. So we thought that was a really cool idea. And the cool thing about Digging and going after Josh, and what I think is kind of a really interesting juxtaposition, is that we did this literally with one location. We had a day to shoot it, and we had a crew of approximately 2. It was me on camera. Also, like, I had this fun rig where I had a shoulder rig, and I had like our sound mixer kind of screwed into the bottom of the camera, where I'm like balancing audio tracks while also like going back and forth, racking focus. and then I had another person off to the side reading lines for Jenny, our actress, who is an amazing actress. Jenny and Steve, the dead body. We felt bad about hiding Steve under a
Blanket,
sheet for blank sheet for most of them. So I told him, I was like, all right, listen, we're gonna make some nightmares over this summer just for Steve, so that he doesn't have to hide his
he gets his screen time.
Yeah, exactly. But it was a wild shoot because we're very DIY. Obviously, we just kind of started this. This was the first or second short that we had shot, so we were still kind of getting our roots essentially. And while we were setting up all of our shoots, my two of my lights actually from my light kit died. So one of them just stopped working, and the other one of the power pins had pulled out. So we're like, all right, we're down to one light. How are we going to do this? And so we kind of moved around and said, all right, well, she's burying a body in the backyard. How do we deal with that? Well, these lights can be diegetic, right? They can be part of the set. So we ended up just going to get some work lights and throwing them up. And we're like, all right, this is what we had to do for what we had available. And it actually works really well with the story because that's essentially what she would be doing, right? She's throwing up these work lights. So we made kind of the inconvenience of equipment failing on us part of the story, so by incorporating these lights kind of into it. So
great.
Yeah, but it was a really fun experience. We had a great time. We did it for fun, really, and we knew, like, all right, it's just four of us in a backyard trying to make a fun story out of this script that I thought was really, really fun and really kind of played on this kind of horror aspect of like a body coming back to life, but really the heart of the story is the relationship between these two characters, and that's what's kind of driving the narrative forward.
I still think the whole concept is amazing. How many more of these have you brought to life? Or how many more dreams or nightmares?
So we have 4 already.
Okay.
They're gonna be released incrementally this summer. A personal favorite of mine is only 10 seconds long, and
wow.
It's the nightmare was I'm a Philadelphia sports fan. So if anybody knows, it is just horrible being a Philadelphia sports fan. So pretty much it's just a guy in a sports jersey crying, and it really hits home for me being from Philadelphia. But I thought that was the cool idea about it, is that it can be like 10 seconds, or it can be, it could be potentially a half hour long, depending on the different kinds of ideas that we can get. And then moving into the summer, we're actually getting ready to shoot 2 more nightmares. One of them actually takes place entirely on a Zoom session,
cool.
which we're really excited to do. Host was an inspiration for that. If you've seen it on Shudder, it's an incredible thing.
Yeah.
But part of my voice as a filmmaker is this kind of horror comedy. Like, I really like witty, sharp dialogue that's kind of playing both into the horror as well as a relationship between characters or a concept. So this one's also going to be a horror comedy. And then we actually just got permission to shoot at a brewery over the summer. So we're going to make this one's not really based on a nightmare, but it's just we got this opportunity to shoot something at a great location. So we're kind of making an Invasion of the Body Snatchers type of short based on these kind of evil cult at a brewery that's distributing beer to their patrons to like control the town that they're in. So we have a lot of cool ideas coming up, which is really cool. We're finishing out the second season of our podcast as well, so trying to keep busy and trying to just make some cool, fun, creative content.
No, I think like I keep saying, I think the whole concept is so much fun, and this could literally launch you guys like so far, because horror is one of the most one of the most sellable pieces of indie content that you could possibly make on the marketplace as well. So I feel like you're in such a great place. The music, I've put a note down for the music throughout the short, which no one who's watching can hear. But I just thought it was really well pieced together with the short film, and it kept the energy and the pace alive. So really well done on that. Was this an original piece or?
Yeah. So I was composer as well. Not to brag.
Oh, well done.
Thank you. So I have a history as a musician. I was a touring musician for a long time, and it's funny because as I was watching Josh's short on here on Silent, I was looking, And I specifically remembered the one time we were driving through Utah, and we had never been through Utah before, and we ended up crashing at like a gas station and woke up to these giant salt flats, and like we had never seen Utah before. Like we didn't know what it was supposed to look like, because like, you know, it's Utah. So we looked and we were like, this looks like it's from like a different planet. Like it looks like a desert from something.
Yeah.
So seeing that's really, really, really cool. But you know, so I'm a musician. You know, film and music are really my two big passions, and I'm a songwriter. And as I was kind of thinking what kind of energy I wanted for this, I really wanted something kind of bouncy but a little creepy. That's kind of, it puts you in that we're supposed to be feeling a sense of unease, but it's also kind of bubbly and bouncy, so that you're getting this kind of dynamic of the relationship between the two from the music.
Yeah.
So I thought I nailed it with this one. I really liked the music for this.
It was one of the things I first noticed was the music.
Okay.
So yeah, I thought it was really cool. I guess I should ask you then the same question, as you're so much in the creative field as a musician and a filmmaker. What inspired you to get into the creative industry? Was it a film, or was it just passion?
So I have like a 2-tier story about this.
Okay.
So the first part is that I am the youngest of 5. And I was born in 1991, so I had this weird kind of layover of like child culture from the 90s as part of my personality, but also all of my older brothers and sisters were from the 80s.
Yeah.
And my family's always loved movies, and specifically my oldest sister, Aubrey, and my dad would make me watch like Footloose all the time when I was little, because it was so popular in the early 80s when my sister and my brother were kids. And I like loved Footloose, so I wanted to be Kevin Bacon, like dancing in the warehouse. Like I was like, this is the greatest movie ever. And also I had this other thing where my dad used to pick me up from preschool every day, and we would go to Blockbuster and we would rent Godzilla VHSs. And so we would watch Godzilla VHSs on the couch, and it was one of my fondest memories from childhood. So at some point, I think my dad was like, okay, he likes monster movies and he really loves Footloose. We should show him Tremors, because that has giant underground worms and Kevin Bacon. And so one day we rented Footloose, and it immediately became my favorite movie, and it is still my favorite movie. Like I love Tremors. That's where like the horror comedy kind of aspect of where my writing comes from. So from a very young age, I loved horror. I loved movies. Sitting on the couch and watching movies with people or going to the movie theater was just always something that made me happy and that I loved.
Yeah.
And then I think in high school, when you start to kind of figure out like, hey, like, all right, what do I want to do with my life? Maybe I should think about this. I went to go see Pan's Labyrinth in theater.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that was the moment where I was like, oh wait, this is art. Like I can do this and make art. And it was so crazy to me to see this, this horror piece essentially with this fantastical elements that was so dramatic and so moving and so beautiful. And so I think like, okay, now I'm going to try to find a way to like mash Tremors and Pan's Labyrinth together to make this weird amalgamation of like
amazing
spooky art comedy. And
yeah.
I think that's kind of like what pushes my personality to this day. And I haven't looked back. I just love creating stuff and living that creative life.
Great answer. I really enjoy asking people this question because everyone's answer is completely different.
Sure.
So I just feel like it's a nice way to get to know someone on a different level very quickly. Cool. David, Joshua, do you have any questions for Michael regarding anything that has been mentioned so far?
Yeah. So earlier we were kind of talking about your love for Stephen King and stuff. I think that was before the stream started.
Yeah.
Yes.
So if you could adapt any horror property, it could be a book, it could be like continuing a series, it could be rebooting. If you could adapt anything, what would you do?
The Dark Tower. It needs to be made. So Stephen King's magnum opus, The Dark Tower. It's a crazy like hybrid of horror, Western, fantasy, sci-fi, which is why it's so difficult to adapt, right? Because it's all these different kind of genres put into one, and they adapted it. They tried once earlier in a movie with you. I actually have see, look at these. He sits there right on my table. But it was just very unsuccessful because they tried to make it one thing, and that's just not what it is. And I think that if you're going to make a Dark Tower movie, you need to make it weird. Like, you need to lean in on it. Like, you need to make Stephen King a character in his own story. Like, that's what needs to happen.
Do you think then that would be too ambitious for a feature film and would fit a TV series more?
Yeah, for sure. It needs to be a TV series.
Okay.
Like I'm hoping that like an HBO or something picks it up, and HBO, if you need my contact info, you can find it. Because I actually, in my spare time, I pretty much only just think about how I would adapt the Dark Tower series, and I have a plan that I think would work really well. So if I could do anything, it would be that, because it's like the ultimate kind of story for me.
That's awesome.
Great question and great answer.
Thank you.
David, did you have anything that you'd like to add?
I do. I'm fascinated by this concept of nightmares. I think that's really clever way to get content, and it's really interesting. You haven't told us what your nightmare is, though. So what is your nightmare? And why haven't you done it yet, if it is? Why haven't you made it? Or is it just too scary to face?
Well, being a Philadelphia sports fan was a nightmare, obviously. So that's mine. But another one is actually, it's kind of based on so I do have a nightmare, and it's actually a feature that I've been working on, trying to type out, and it's kind of inspired by The Shining, as well as different experiences of my life where we experience, like, I think generational trauma is something that is my nightmare, that I tend to experience a lot. And I think it's something from The Shining that I take from, which is Jack Torrance in the book The Shining. What his the real scary thing to him is being able to pass on something to his son that he's afraid that he doesn't want to, that he's going to turn his son into himself. And so for me, I have this nightmare of, like, if I ever have a child, like, passing on things to that child that I'm afraid that's part of my personality that I'm afraid to give to them. And so I'm working on this feature called Now and Then that kind of juxtaposes the experiences of a person who has a relationship with his father, and it's like a troubled relationship, and he's literally passing on this, like, shadowy, dark monster experience, like ghost kind of thing that's part of their personality that's being transferred from generation to generation. It's about this younger character trying to repair the relationship between him and his family, as well as he's an expecting dad, and he's trying to figure out how to not kind of give it to the next generation. So that's my nightmare. I'm trying to make it like a bigger kind of thing. So I've been working on this feature for a few months now, and hopefully at some point I can finish and get some funding and maybe make that my first feature. So
Fantastic. Maybe Shudder are looking for original content as well.
Yeah.
So
Yep.
there you go. Cool. Well, thank you so much. Let's move over to David. So I'm just gonna load your film up this side. Tell us again about your laziness to trapping yourself in a room and making an animation.
Well, it gets a bit more disturbing. So not only was I kind of lazy, I also was, for this movie, I was seeking vengeance on somebody. So that's kind of the reason why this movie got made. So in a fun way. So a long time ago, like 15 years ago, I was talking with my friend. I won't tell you his name because I don't want to embarrass him. Very nice guy. But anyway, my friend Benny and I were talking about making movies, and I said, like, I want to make this movie, I want to make that movie. And he was like, there's no point making movies unless you have like $250 million, and it's about spaceships and robots and huge explosions, and you got big actors in there. There's no point telling that story at all. And I was so offended by that. I found that so scandalous. And I was like, that's total nonsense. If you are a good storyteller, you should be able to, and I just picked something off the top of my head. I go, you should be able to tell a story about a pencil. Like, if you really are a storyteller, you don't need all of that stuff. You don't need huge budget and VFX and all of this crazy, huge sets and fancy costumes. That should be enough, just having a pencil. And he goes, no, that's bullshit. No way. So anyway, I kind of forgot about that for 15 years. And then when I started making this, when I transitioned into animation, I was like, now's the time to prove if I was right. So I decided to make one of the stories in this thing about a pencil. And that was like the heart of this movie, that all you need is a pencil and, his journey, and that should be enough. So that was going to be the movie just by itself. But then it sort of spiraled into this whole other, there's like 6 or 7 stories in this thing. I can't even count them because they all overlap. It starts off with, the opening scene is a murder, a surprise murder. And when we get to the end, it's the same scene as the first scene, and we get more insight, and we see why the murder happened. And it's all these strangers who are, they don't know each other, and their stories overlap. And then we get the explanation of why the person, I don't want to give too much away, but if people are watching, they probably saw the bird get his head chopped up.
Yeah, yes, they did.
Yeah. So that's sort of how it came about. And I sent the link, of course, to my friend, and so vengeance was had. Yeah.
Nice. Yeah, and the pencil scenario that you were just talking about is now currently screening.
Oh, he's just on?
It's just on now.
I love that pencil.
I think it's great, but the animation style, how come you decided to go with that style of animation rather than something else?
I'm a minimalist. Like you can see, I got nothing back here. It's just me in an empty room. I'm sitting on a chair and have a table. That's all I've got. So I love that the spare, it's not fussy. The quality of the animation is just like bare bones, but it's still very pleasing. It's sort of the bright colors. I try to make it engaging. I include some sort of visual effects there where the smoke is real smoke. If they smash glass, it's real glass smashing. If there's water, it's not real water. Actually, I animated the water. It's a bad example. So I just wanted it to be simple and pleasing, and I wanted it to be sort of very universal. That's why there's no dialogue in the whole movie. It's all just visual. The only thing that, there's like one place where there's actual writing, where that's like a crucial thing. It's, it says a couple of things, the pencil's writing something. But other than that, I wanted it to be like anyone in the world could watch it. Any age can watch it. It's nothing really, it's got the bird getting his head cut off, but it's very cartoonish. It's very friendly. I wanted it to be available to everyone. So that's sort of how the look came about, just not being fussy. But then it also relates to my laziness. Like I didn't want to get too detailed. Like it's got as much detail as it needs and no more. So it's pleasing to look at, and it tells you what you need to know to understand the story, but it's not overly, intricately detailed. But I feel like you're still drawn into the story. So
yeah,
I wanted
absolutely.
to sort of keep it at that level.
Great. And you were saying that this, sorry, you were saying that this is a universal project. So what is the plan? Are you looking for distribution, or what are you trying to do with this project?
So as a kid, I was obsessed with Looney Tunes. So I'm from Australia. That would explain my sort of kangaroo accent. So anyway, they would show a block of half an hour or an hour of Looney Tunes, and it would be, a Daffy Duck and a Bugs Bunny and a Roadrunner. And as a kid, I loved it, but I kind of was annoyed that it was just like a one Daffy Duck, one Bugs Bunny, one Roadrunner, and they sort of like weren't connected. So sitting there as a kid, I was like 7 or something. I was like, what they should do? They should be overlapping. Why isn't the Roadrunner and Bugs Bunny mixing it up? Like that would be so much. They didn't have crossovers. Yeah. So with this movie, like I had like a bunch of characters that they have their own little story, but then they start interrupting each other and crossing over, and you see them in the background and all that kind of thing. So was that the question you asked?
Not really. I was just wondering what was the life for this project after the festival circuit. Are you looking to distribute it?
I'm getting to that.
But what you were talking about then is very interesting.
I lost what I was thinking. But yes, it does. So my point was, like, I left a lot of loose ends in it. So there's like what happens. I don't know what's on screen right now. There's where the pencil shows up again after the boy gets his dog, and surprise,
that's on screen right now.
Oh my gosh! So yeah, so that's like a big surprise and a reveal. Oh, that evil, or is he evil? Pencil is there. Is he going to do something to that kid with his dog? Which seemed like a happy ending. So there's a few like loose ends. So it's certainly would be great for a serial in the sense of like those Daffy Duck cartoons where, but they never continue. It's always like a standalone thing. So I wanted it to be serialized and each episode having cliffhangers and make you want to watch the next one. So I've already sort of drafted the 5-6 episodes after this, and then each one introduces new characters, and then we get new insights to these stories, like why, what's the vendetta of the pencil? What's the vendetta? Like, why was that kid lost his dog? Like, what happened to his first dog? Like, all of that is going to be explained in like subsequent episodes.
Great.
And there could be like 10-15 minutes each, and so yeah, I definitely pictured this as a ongoing series. So that's kind of the goal, and this is the proof of concept.
That's what
put it together.
Yeah.
Perfect. Pitching is very hard. I find pitching very hard, and also people don't like to read. So if you give someone a script and you try to, they read it and they're like, okay, maybe I'll read it. And if they do read it, they don't necessarily get it. But humans are visual creatures. You
Absolutely.
show someone something and they immediately get it. Like, oh, okay, I get it. Like that's what that is. I don't need to read a whole thing. I'm immediately sold on it. So this was kind of like a pilot in a way. Like, this is what the show should be, and look how much fun it is. Why wouldn't you want to make this?
So you were saying there that pitching is hard, which it really is. How far along on this journey are you?
In pitching?
Or as in getting it made into a series?
So the subsequent episodes are drafted but not written, and this thing took a long time to make. So I'm a little reluctant to like go into episode 2, 3, and 4 because this took over a year to make, and it's 8 minutes. It was originally 9 minutes, but it had some additional scenes which I had to cut out because that didn't quite work, and people wouldn't immediately see this as a serialized thing because I also wanted to work as a standalone short film.
Great.
So my goal was to submit to some wonderful festivals such as Lift-Off and get some hype, and it's also in 9 other festivals.
Fantastic.
That also I'm super ecstatic to be in, and my goal was like, that's a sort of a runway, people get excited, it's in some festivals, and then you can sort of like take it out and say, hey, look at this, why you should make this for me, because where's my budget? Let's put this on TV.
No, that's really great that it has had that much festival selections, and it is getting hype around it. That it is the key, especially like you were saying, like, people don't like to read too much. So if you have a visual cue, whether that's a sizzle reel or a pilot episode, and then you have festival laurels attached to that as well, it just ticks the box of approval, and it definitely makes you stand out from the masses that get submitted to sales agents, distributors, producers, whoever else you're looking for. So you're on the right tracks for sure.
It truly makes a huge difference. Everyone wants to know what's the last thing you did and how well did it do. So it's really hard to beat that.
The other question that is often asked is, what else do you have coming up? What else is in the pipeline? So, if you've already got these episodes drafted up, then it's good to have that response immediately if someone does take an interest. So, very cool.
And I'm also cheap because, the whole thing, it was like there was no cast or additional crew. It was just me sitting on my couch with my laptop. So, but unfortunately, unlike Joshua, I'm not fast. So if you've got nothing going on and you're interested in the subject material, I'd like to offer you a gig to help me bash a few of these episodes out, because you seem like really zippy. Like, you can do it in a day. So
animation's a whole different thing, though. Like, it takes a lot more attention to detail than. Well, I guess it depends on the visual effect, but like, animation is something I just don't have the patience for.
It's really time consuming. It's really time consuming. I find it a lot like writing, actually, because it's you alone in a room and your laptop, And, you know, it's going to be hours. You're going to be there 10, 15 hours bashing away on something tiny. Like, should that comma be there? How could this sentence be any better? Why does his arm look weird? You know, whatever it is, when it moves like that. So it is really spending time alone, sweating over the tiny details until it gets good. And, yeah, it's kind of the same muscles in a way as writing.
Yeah. I hadn't really connected those two together in that way. So that was well said. I guess then my next question would be, which is the same as I've asked the others. Why did you want to get into this industry? What inspired you?
The thing was, I was obsessed with the first movie I saw that sort of made me cocoa bananas was Red is the Lost Ark. When I saw that, and I was a little kid and I was over at my friend's house and he had a video and I'm like, what is this? You know, it looks old timey, like just looking at the cover, like, is this, you know, it's like in the 50s or something. But when I started watching that thing, I was glued to that screen.
Yeah.
And fireworks went off in my brain and I was like, wow, this is the greatest thing I've ever seen. And not only am I super into movies now, because that was felt like the first movie I saw. Like I saw a lot of like crap and, you know, like, this is not very good. But this was the first movie that felt like a movie. And it also kind of made me insane for wanting to do what Indiana Jones did. So I have so many scars and my knee hurts because as a kid, I immediately like, okay, I'm going home and jumping off the roof. Or I'm going to try and jump through the window of a car. So, you know, like the car wasn't moving, but I hit my head on the top of the door and I got a concussion. And just, I had to have a whip, had to have a machete, you know, like all of the Indiana Jones bonkers stuff. So later in life, this was like 10 years ago, when I made my first feature film, I was like, now's the time to marry the two. So I made a documentary about myself, which was loosely based on myself, where I went out onto the streets of LA as a real life superhero with this character called Hero Man. Many people may have not seen this movie. So it's out there, but I don't don't completely recommend it. But I got really injured during making that movie and I loved it and it took over a year to make. And it was so hard with like all the locations and I got so beat up making it that it kind of drove me to animation because I was like, it's so hard to make something live action. Like I've had the hell beaten out of me. And when I look at the finished product, I'm not overly jazzed with the results. Yeah. And it's like, at the end of the day, like, can we go back and reshoot this? And it's like, we can't get that location. It's expensive. We don't have the actors anymore, et cetera, really expensive. So I was like, if you're sitting in a room with your laptop and you want to make something on the frame exactly the way you want, you can take as long as you want if you're animating it. That kind of light bulb went off and I was like, yeah, I should be doing that because it's going to get you closer to your finished product than sort of anything else you can do, you know? Yeah. So it's just a matter of how much time you're willing to, and patience you're willing to put into it, as opposed to time and budget and availability and other people and locations and weather and light and gear. All you need is yourself, a table and a laptop and
time,
some cookies.
And cookies and time.
And, yeah, and you're good, you know, you can get it as good as you want, you know. So that kind of was the journey. And I love live action. I love making documentaries. I made a few documentaries, but animation has kind of won me over. So, yeah.
Very cool. Great. Thank you. Joshua, Michael, do you have any questions for David?
I do. So are there any animators that inspire you or what was your kind of journey with inspiration for animation specifically?
I love anything Warner Brothers, all that. I love that manic sort of heart attack, fast, insane, you know, crazy, bonkers vibe, which I try to put into this movie, where it's very fast. Each scene is like pretty short, and there's sort of not necessarily violence in there. Only the first scene is really violent, but the rest of it has sort of like a kinetic insanity to it, which I just feel audience kind of. I wanted it to make something that was audiences couldn't really look away from too easily. That it was just like constantly something new zapping them. And my influences are so like Warner Brothers animation, and also mixed with probably Tim Burton. I like his creepy, you know, dark, spooky, unsettled kind of vibe, I like that. It sort of resonates with me. So those would be the main ones.
Great. Fantastic. Joshua, do you have a question as well?
I do. So are there any projects that you have thought of that might bring you back to doing something live action, or maybe a hybrid of animation and live action?
So I'm thinking of, because my feature film, which was, like I said, I wasn't overly jazzed by. I was thinking of doing like a mockumentary about the making of this movie, how it displeased me so much, where I would chop in footage of that movie with interviews of the people who helped me make it, and why we are so upset with the result. And it would be sort of a comedy, So there is that I would love to do that as a live action thing. And I do have scripts, that I've written over the years that were well received at like script writing competitions that I would love to do. And I also like the mix of, I do have another, my previous, I've only made 2 animations. My previous one was called Witch, which also did really well in festivals. And that one has live action backgrounds, like real sort of like, photos of this and that, but the characters are animated. So I do love that mix. So it's something I'm playing around with. And that ultimately, that is my dream, to turn that my other movie into an ongoing, like half-hour, 10-season show. That would be wonderful. And that is live action, would be real actors mixed with like little characters, sort of magical creatures and antics and adventure and backstabbing and villains and spooky tunnels and castles and bats and all those creatures.
Nice.
Awesome.
Nice. Well, thank you guys so much for joining us on today's call. That we have now come to the end of the stream, and I can see actually the viewing figures have been pretty good throughout. So that's right. Amazing. So we've had over 60 viewers so far, and like I mentioned to you guys, that's only going to grow as time goes on. So thank you so much for joining us on today's call, and thank you to everyone who has been watching. Until next time, we'll see you soon. Bye-bye.
Bye.